Alright, hello there everyone, this is Kingdom bringing you another episode in the Ultimate Theorycrafted Guide. This week we have for you a guide on Crystal Maiden's skill build. She's getting a fair amount of play in the pro scene right now. She's got a lot of disables. She's also very strong on ganking lineups for her aura, and her ultimate does a shit ton of damage, so definitely very relevant. And a bunch of people skill her different ways, so I thought I'd go ahead and put a guide together. With me today is the wonderful Splendiferous Foxy.
Don't do the... God damn it.
He is wonderful and splendiferous, whether or not he admits to being so himself. So, anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about Crystal Maiden's skill, and talk less about Foxy. Before we begin, we're going to go ahead and take a look.
Let's not change the subject yet. Okay, let's change the subject.
Alright, so before we take a look at what builds to do at what levels, I'm just going to show you this graph here of ability scaling. And as you can see, all three of her non-ultimate abilities scale differently. The flat aura basically is 25, 50, 75, 100% per level. Very simple, straightforward. You can see that Frost Nova is very strong at level 1 at almost 80%, but then doesn't scale as quickly as the other two abilities. And also, one more interesting thing to notice is the Frostbite scaling, which at level 2 takes a huge jump from about 70% up to almost 90% because of how the damage works. So
it's worth taking note that when taking a look at the idea of ability scaling, we are simply measuring those aspects of the spell which change over its leveling. In Crystal Nova, you get an increase in damage and the slow duration. With Frostbite, you get an increase in the duration of the spell, which results in a longer disable and slightly more damage. With the increase of, Arcane Aura? Yeah, Arcane Aura, you get an increase in mana regen, and a doubled increase in mana regen for Crystal Maiden herself. So you have to think about each one of these spells individually while you're looking at how they scale in their individual spell effectiveness.
So with this scaling in mind, what do you think we can say about Crystal Maiden's first skill point? What should she level first?
Obviously, you should never skill anything until you know what you need, unless you're Venomancer. And which involves... just saying. Which, sorry. So ultimately, if you're going out as 5v5, it's probably smart to skill Crystal Nova, but ultimately you're not going to know until an engagement starts, or until you're all the way out in lane. Crystal Nova is clearly the best option because it changes the least over the course of its scaling, of its leveling up the skill. It changes the least.
Well, also it's the most effective at level 1, and in terms of total effectiveness. So, if we're talking like say a 5-on-5 engagement in the jungle over warding, your Crystal Nova can hit the entire team fight with a 3.5 second slow. That's pretty significant. Whereas your Frostbite can only do 1, and your Aura won't do shit.
Yeah. So basically, Crystal Nova is the best option for level 1. Only cases in which you would change that is if you were up against a lineup involving a Darkseer, Anti-Mage, Queen of Pain, heroes with mobility-based spells that would otherwise allow them to escape from a tight situation.
Like, for instance, if you're ganking a Darkseer, you can skill Frostbite, wait until he pops Surge, and then as soon as he turns Surge on, you freeze him, and the Surge duration runs out while he's frozen and can't move.
Yep. Just a few special things to note about Crystal Maiden's skills. Like I noted before, Arcane Aura does have a double effect on Crystal Maiden herself, so although it is only a 25% effectiveness at level 1, it's still better than even the Vlad's Aura. It's 1 whole mana regen per second at level 1 for Crystal Maiden. Another thing to note is that Frostbite does allow the casting of virtually every spell. It is an entangle in Warcraft 3. It was an entangle mechanic. You can cast through it. You can TP away. I think you can channel spells through it. Some of them.
Mm-hmm. Anything that isn't a blink.
Yeah.
But you can do like a Murano before staff.
Yep. You can use items. You can use items, etc.
Right. Alright, so then, go ahead and moving forward then, we're going to go ahead and take a look at level 7 builds. Virtually, I'm not going to talk about level 3, because essentially everyone does 1 point into each skill at 3. Like, I've never seen someone not do that.
Well,
pretty universally.
There was a certain time of popularity of simply leveling up Crystal Nova and Frostbite and maxing both of those first up through level 8. I'm not a fan of that because Aura is just too OP.
Yeah, especially early game when you need mana regeneration more than anything else. Anyway, so basically at 3, go have 1 point into each skill, and then we can move on and look at level 7 builds where one of your skills should be maxed. And so we've got this wonderful looking chart here, but first let's go ahead and take a look at what to think about when you're picking your skills and what build you're going to have at level 7. Kind of think about a couple things. First of all, your position and role. If you're sitting in lane, you might be able to take more points into Aura to help your teammates who are out ganking. However, if you're roaming with someone else, you want your nukes to be maxed out so that you can do more damage and have more effective slows and disables. If your enemy team has blinkers or mobility-based people, you would want to level up Frostbite over Nova. If your whole ally team is very mana-dependent, you might want to put more points into Aura. And if you were to take your ultimate at level 7, you would need to have a setup stun, like an Enigma Black Hole, Reverse Polarity, Treant Protector Ultimate.
Basically, on account of the 7-second duration, it is incredibly unreliable, although it does apply the same slow as Crystal Nova in the very large area that it has, so it does have utility.
And it also does almost 1,000 damage at level 1.
At level 1. To any target that is within, what is it, a 300 AoE of Crystal Maiden? It's pretty close.
Like that.
Like the damage.
Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at these builds that we have here in our comparison graph. You've got 2 points into Nova, max Frostbite, 1 point into Aura. You have max Nova with 2 Frostbite, 1 Aura. You've got 1 point into Nova, max Frostbite, 2 points into Aura, and your 1 point into Nova and Aura, a point into the ultimate, and max Frostbite. So looking at these, I've tended in my builds to max Frostbite first because the duration scale is a little bit better than Nova, and it does more overall damage than Nova. And what is it at level 4? Is it a 2.5 second? No, a 3 second disable.
It's a 3 second entangle. I think some things to note is that you have to think a lot about the enemy lineup and how the enemies are playing. If you're having a very generic game where you have the 2-1-2 lane setup, and you have the guy for mid rotating into the dual lanes. Hopefully, he's rotating into the dual lanes to gank. It won't always. But if you have a situation like that, you probably are better off getting kills in lane to get an advantage over your opposing laners, so that even if the mid person does come to gank, they will not have a sufficient enough advantage over you to get any kills on you. In which case, Frostbite, with its very, very long 3 seconds, is a very long disable on any standard. It also deals a very reliable 280 damages at level 4. Very high damage, very long disable. It will, in most cases, guarantee a kill if you max it out first. It's a very strong skill. However, Nova at level 4, it is 250 damage in one of the biggest AoE non-ultimate skills in the game. It applies a massive, I'm pretty sure the slow does scale, I think it goes up to 4.5 or 5 seconds of 30% movement speed slow at level 4. It has a 700 casting range with a massive AoE giving you a reach of up to 1100. It is an incredible control spell, and if you are up against the lineup with a lot of push, in which case you might need some help setting up for an Enigma Black Hole, setting up for a TP level 6 Ravage to prevent that very early push, you want that max Crystal Nova to maximize your AoE damage and to help give control to your teammates.
Yeah, it's very skill. It's also very good for clearing out creep waves if you're trying to prevent the push. Against Chen creeps, if your opponent's got a Chen or an Enchantress, keep in mind that Frostbite has a full 10-second duration against creeps, so it's very effective at preventing that Centaur from getting a stun off or shutting down. It basically, just casting Frostbite on a creep will kill it 9 times out of 10.
Seriously, it's like 700 damage, WTF.
Yeah, so I've got one other. So you can see these various builds all have different effectivenesses. My personal favorite that I play with is the 4 into Frostbite, 2 into 1 into Nova. Keeping Nova at level 1 because it doesn't scale as quickly as the other two, and then maximizing the Aura and the Frostbite so that your team has more mana going into the early game. But also something to keep in mind here is that I've got a slot for total combo damage. So that is what that's telling you is the amount of damage that your combo, which is Frostbite Nova, no, not in order, it's Nova Frostbite Ultimate, will do as a percentage of the total it can do with all of those skills maxed. So as you can see, Ultimate is the major, biggest part of Crystal Maiden's damage, because the build that includes her Ultimate has 3 times the combo damage of.
Okay, so let's score up here. After magical damage reduction, this is the number you will see in the game if you use Crystal Maiden's Ultimate up against another hero for its full duration, full 7-second duration. You will inflict quite nearly 1,000 damage. That is enough to kill almost every hero at level 6.
Yeah, so if you've got a teamfight lineup with that Enigma and you're defending your tower, it's definitely worth scaling at level 6. It's situational. I wouldn't do it every time because it's massively mana intensive.
But if suddenly you find yourself in a really tight spot, you're getting chased, you get that level up to 6, you're like, yes, I got this. You make a totally clutch move, turn around, ult, get a triple kill. Your team is just like, oh my god, Crystal Maiden is so OP. Enemy team is raging. Do it! Please. It is a massive damage spell so long as the channeling will not be disabled and you have enough HP to survive through it.
Yeah. And we're going to move on to talk about level 11 builds. So you can see here the criteria change a little bit as you move into the mid-game. You've got to think about ganking versus team fighting, what your lineup is intended to do. You got to think about whether your team is playing defensively or offensively. If you're a pushing early game lineup without strong carry potential, you need to play offensively. Or if you're just trying to protect your void to get freaking OMG WTF farm, then you're playing defensively. And then also Crystal Maiden's role, because she can pretty naturally fit into either a 3 or 4 or a 5, I would say.
Absolutely.
And so you have to keep in mind, okay, so if you're the War Bitch, you're the War Bitch, and you're not going to have as much levels and you're not going to have as much gold, so accordingly you need to worry less about doing damage and more about skill utility. Whereas if you're a 3, you do need to be doing that damage, and so you need to be maxing your combo. So with that in mind, the question at level 11 is which 2 skills to have maxed and whether or not to put points into your ultimate. So as you can see here, skill effectiveness, to get the maximized graph here, the graph with most high bars, Disregarded Ultimate is 3 Nova, 4 Frostbite, 4 Aura build. So that gets almost all of your skills. So at that point, you've got a max duration Frostbite, you've got 4 mana regen per second on yourself, and 2 on everyone else
every
on your
one
team.
of your teammates. Every one of your teammates.
And then also your Nova is
whole
doing...
Team. Did we mention that that's the whole team? Anywhere on the map, too. Just anywhere. You could be doing lead jukes in the jungle, and Crystal Maiden's like, I got you, bro. 2 mana regen per second. We got this.
Okay. Your Nova then would only do 200 damage, not 250, but it would still have almost the full duration and almost full effectiveness anyway.
Obviously that's absurd, because Crystal Maiden is, by all objective standards, a cold bitch. I would never say that.
Cool. Yeah. So also at level 2, your ultimate, the scaling for your ultimate from level 1 to level 2 isn't as big as the scaling from 2 to 3, which is one of the only reasons why I would not take ultimate at 11. I would wait till 15 or 16, but both of these builds here show that if you're trying to do DPS, you can, with your ultimate, you can see that you can get almost 50% of your potential DPS with max Nova, max Frostbite.
It's actually a very interesting thing. I mean, the way that the freezing field damage scales, it seems very even. I gotta take a peek at the exact numbers. Yeah, it's 105 to 170 to 250. It's a jump from 65. It's a jump of 65 and then a jump of 80. It's only a third damage percentage increase from 2 to 3, but ultimately, for whatever reason, her ultimate at level 2 simply just doesn't have that much bigger damage output than level 1. This showed to be true in both Warcraft 3, Dota 1, and Dota 2. I'm willing to call it a bit of an anomaly, since just counting the number of explosions happening and so on and so forth, it seems like it should be more damage, but it's not. I mean, maybe I'm just talking crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, level 3 ultimate is amazing. It does tons of damage. Level 2, not quite as much, but at any rate, you can definitely take her ultimate at 11 if you've got the mana, if you're sitting in that 3 roll and you've got an Enigma or something to set you up so that you can just sit there and beat on people with about 1,200 damage, wasn't it?
Yeah. But, I mean, mind you, it's at level 2, it's a 400 mana cost. I think when we leveled up with a relatively generic support build, Crystal Maiden, she had, 700 mana at level 11?
Yeah, and her ultimate cost.
That's like 4/7 of your mana. No joke. It's a freaking ton of your mana.
Yeah, more than pi.
Granted, if you were going to get a buttload of damage output from it, yeah, go for it. But otherwise, leaving it at level 1 is just fine. 1,000 damage is very big at any stage of the game if you can get it all off.
Right. So, in regards to the other 2 skills, you can max, without taking your ultimate, you can max 2 skills to have 3 points into the other one. So, of those, if you are roaming and ganking with your team, I would say max your nukes and leave Aura for last. However, again, if you're babysitting for Protect 1 or whatever, and you've got a Quap roaming by herself or something like that, then I would take more points into Aura than nukes. I would leave Nova for later then, because you're not looking to do damage, you're trying to help your team do damage by having more mana regen, so that your roaming ganker, Quap, Batrider, TA, whoever has to go back to Fountain less.
Now, ultimately, it's important to remember mana regen will allow both you and your team to maintain ganking, so it is entirely plausible to simply max all 3 relatively evenly, giving not so much of an advantage to any one or 2 spells over the course of your leveling. It's entirely plausible.
I don't know. I would still max something by 7. I think because all of her spells are immensely strong in the early game. So they doing 300 damage at level 7 is very relevant in every situation.
Actually, that's a thing to factor in, because the Frostbite duration is going to allow any hero to be within attack range for a longer period of time, allowing for that one hero to be focused on much more quickly than the 30% movement speed slow from Nova. There's going to be less of an inclusion of physical damage as a result of the slow.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Frostbite's better for single target ganking, and I would say Nova's better defensively and better for multi-target ganking. But at any rate. So yeah, that's level 11 builds. And with that, I think from that point it's obvious you just take, once you max all of your skills, then I would max your ultimate by 16, but anyway, that's a little bit...
The damage is obscene. The damage is positively obscene.
I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there. I want to go ahead and take a look at this page now, which is Aura versus stats, because this is something that I've gotten into arguments with a couple high-level players with before, and I see people doing this occasionally, especially in pubs, is not taking their Aura and only taking stats, or only leaving the Aura at 1 and taking points of stats. So these graphs, top 2 graphs, show you the difference in stats between CM with stats and CM with Aura. And as you can see, the difference is infinitesimal.
Positively infinitesimal.
There's no point in doing it. It's at most it's 300 HP, which is all right. It's not can't be right. It's not 300. It's 200 HP, and a little bit over 100 mana. It really, really doesn't make that much of a difference at all, compared to this graph at the bottom, which is this graph takes a little bit of explanation. So when you've got your Aura, you're giving extra mana per minute to your team in region, and that mana translates directly into having access to enough mana for nukes. So you can say that having that extra nuke in a region is like having extra damage per minute because of Crystal Maiden's Aura. So this graph shows you, by level of Aura, how much extra damage in nukes you get per minute in region. And as you can see at level 4 Aura, it's a little bit over 1,500 damage. At level 1 Aura, it's 500 damage. So Aura scales very effectively and allows your team to do so much more damage, and it allows your team to push more effectively without needing as much regen. I mean, Aura it's one of the things. The problem with Aura is that it's not a noticeable effect, right? You don't see Aura winning you a game.
There aren't any HP or mana bars like shooting straight up or down. It's not burst. Nothing happens very quickly because of Crystal Maiden's Aura.
But what does happen? But you don't notice it happening. But this Aura will win you the game. I'm not even kidding. It does that for you. Like
the fact of the matter is,
every minute it's a lot.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, when you're having that same little, when you're trying to push to the high ground, the team that is able to stay there at the tier 3 tower the longest through however many creep waves it takes to breach that tower in the barracks is going to win. If it's a very slow siege and the hero's HP and mana is going down relatively slowly, the team that survives the longest with the highest HP and mana after all those creep waves are going to win. That's all there is to it. That's not all there is to it, but they're going to win the numbers game.
Yeah, and it also means you can gank more frequently because you'll have enough mana to gank more frequently. It also means you can stay in lane longer to get more XP and gold because you don't have to go back to Fountain to regen your mana. It means you have to buy less clarity potions. It means your team has to worry less about mana items like soul rings, arcane boots.
I mean, when you haven't, and especially, oh my god, so especially with those mana-hungry casting strength heroes. We have the Earthshaker, the Tidehunter, Treant Protector, Centaur Warrunner, Centaur Warchief, I'm so sorry. All of these heroes, they have very small mana pools and mana-intensive spells. If you have any engagement that lasts more than a minute, that's an extra spell for almost all of them.
Yeah, it is. And especially since, seriously, one single fissure can change the course of a team fight.
It can be as
long
as
single echo slam.
8-second disable. You block off that path. You get the creeps for the heroes coming in. You've got all the Chinese commentators yelling "Surround!" Shit goes crazy.
It's great.
But if Earthshaker is hanging in the back, he throws his first fissure, second fissure. He's just kind of chilling there, going, "Well, that was anticlimactic." But then you factor in, "Oh my God, Crystal Maiden maxed her aura. I've got all this mana to work with. This is glorious." And he throws the extra fissure, or maybe he uses enchant totem and the stun procs, and he gets the biggest whack of his life. And there are scenarios in which you don't have Crystal Maiden, in which he's just like the Earthshaker isn't contributing as much. So ultimately, Crystal Maiden, I guess that's a good way to put it. Crystal Maiden helps the contribution of heroes that would otherwise not be able to do as much.
Right, it makes every single person on your team better. Now, this is my argument for always maxing Aura before you take any points in stats. So I would say max all 3 of her skills by 14, or 11 if you're not taking ultimate, or 12 if you're not taking ultimate. Don't substitute stats for any of her skills, basically. They're so strong and have such a big effect on the game. Alright, second one is ultimate. So second thing we're going to look at is taking stats versus leveling her ultimate. I've seen people just leave her ultimate for 23, 24, 25 because they think it's worthless, because they can get interrupted and it doesn't do that much damage and it's slow and it's crappy. And I mean, hey, it's CM. She's a support hero. She doesn't do team fight damage. Yeah. I mean, come on, look at this number down here. It says ultimate uses because team fight damage. It's a massive slow over a big AoE. Say your base is getting pushed, so you're trying to defend against two lanes of mega creeps while the rest of your team is base racing. This ultimate does almost 3,000 damage after reduction at level 3. Okay?
So it's actually going to deal more damage to those creeps that are trying to maul your... Every single creep in the beginning AoE with that ultimate is dead. Every single one.
Yeah, that ultimate is so strong at level 3. And so here, these graphs show you how much more stats you would have. So this is assuming level 16, Crystal Maiden. And so you can see on the left is the stats you have with your 3 points adult. On the right is the points you have with 4 points into stats. Do the graphs look basically identical? Right?
Very close.
The only major difference is in effective HP because those, I think it's what is it? 6 points of agility give you a point of armor. And
Yeah.
so basically, ultimate is so much more important, especially if you've got a big, like if you've got a Darkseer, an Enigma, a Magnus, any
Magnus
hero,
especially.
You can just team wipe someone with the Crystal Maiden ultimate. You can. It's so much damage. Even at like 40 minutes into the game, 3,000 damage is a ton.
And to this effect, I think she even ranks higher than still common support heroes like Sand King, because I mean, she has more utility in spells than Sand King. Sure, she has less HP, but she makes up for it in contribution. And if your carries are less willing to say, oh, that's the Crystal Maiden, I don't have to help her, I'll keep killing the enemy supports. If you change that mindset about what Crystal Maiden is, she will deal significantly more damage, and you will win games with her.
She's a very strong hero with very, very strong spells, and you should always level those spells before you take stats. Period.
I mean, it is an inevitable reality. Eventually, 16 more HP is going to save your ass. But I mean, when you have more damage from your entire team, when you have more kills going down because of the effectiveness of your spells, you are going to have more gold, more items. It snowballs.
Yeah, it really does. It's extremely effective. Like, seriously, I can't even count the number of times I've been at the Roche Pit and gotten an ultra kill with Crystal Maiden's ultimate.
Oh god, yes,
like,
it's my favorite. He's chilling down there on the low ground, and I'm like, well, I'll take the high road. Bam.
It's awesome. It's very, very, very powerful. So, alright, that pretty much wraps up our discussion of Crystal Maiden's skill builds. So, thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, go ahead and subscribe, and I will keep adding more guides to this Ultimate Theorycrafted guide so you guys can learn more about Dota. Thank you, Popsy, for helping with the video.
Oh, and do be sure to check out the little intro that I'll post on my channel. You should watch that. Just saying.
Yeah. So definitely check out Fopsy's channel at youtube.com/FopsyDota and all that fun stuff. So thanks, guys. GG.